My name is Peter Kerek. I am the candidate for the Communist Party of Canada in the Kamloops-Thompson-Cariboo riding. Well, I've been a resident of Kamloops since 1980, and I went to high school here, and after high school, Norcam was my high school where I graduated with honors, and immediately started attending Cariboo College and entered the degree program offered through UBC. So I finished with a Bachelor of Arts degree in '97, and then I returned to school in '99, and then completed a journalism degree here at TRU in 2003. And during those years, I worked as a community social services worker, and then after all my university education, I went into labor relations and worked for one of the big unions in BC. And then after that, I went into transportation, and I'm a very happy father and husband. I have 4 kids, they're 8, 6, 3, and 1, and I'm committed to staying in Kamloops and serving Kamloops. Top priority that would really help out this riding, I feel, is to revamp our whole tax system so that wealth is more fairly distributed. And that's a nationwide plan, but of course it's going to help Kamloops. And there's plenty of evidence that shows when you put money in the hands of folks who have the least, they spend that money locally, and that actually helps local economies. Money that is easily accrued in the hands of the one percenters, the super rich in our society, is money that's taken out of communities and typically invested in projects that have nothing to do with the community in which the resources were taken out of, and also is spent on things like luxury properties, luxury cars, luxury boats, none of which are manufactured in the Kamloops area. So a restructuring of the tax system so that the people who need a lift up receive that and are brought out of poverty, ending homelessness, building enough affordable housing to end homelessness. Those are all things that help local economies and would definitely help Kamloops and the outlying areas. Our party supports the elimination of all post-secondary tuition at university, college, all publicly funded institutions. There should be no tuition. And beyond that, we would like to have a program of debt forgiveness so that folks coming out of university are no longer, and folks who have come out of university over the years have come out with this debt burden. And it really restrains your ability to pursue your dreams, for one thing, or even pursue the career in which you're trained for, because you get stuck in this circle of debt that makes it's kind of like a new type of serfdom, where we're imposing this great load of debt on young people, and they immediately become more desperate because they have debt. And that works for those at the top of the capitalist pyramid, because people who are desperate are more likely to work for lower wages and demand less at their work site. And this is a greater problem of the capitalist system. Our party supports the purchasing, construction, and operation of affordable housing units and complexes across the country, especially where homelessness has been identified, but also in communities where there's price gouging. So when you have price gouging landlords only competing with other price gouging landlords, there's nothing to bring the prices down. And people who can't purchase their own home are exploited for the amount of money that they have available in their pocket. And we hear this all the time, even among seniors, that have to make the decision between heat, medicine, and rent. And it's bad enough it's happening to that vulnerable community, but then to have young people and students in particular who are in the process of trying to develop themselves and acquire the type of education and training to become a productive member of society. It's really kind of shameful that we treat young people like that. So, when you bring in a publicly funded and operated housing complex, it also works as a mitigating factor against the price gouging landlords. So instead of just competing with each other, you now have this public option where people can say, hey, I actually can go live in that other place where it's affordable, and the price gouging landlords are therefore forced to start competing with that, and that would have a mitigating effect on their price demands. Well, we would support funding and providing supports like loans and grants for new startups that are worker-run co-ops. So bringing democracy into the workplace and having workers run their work site is one way to take the power out of the hands of major corporations that close sawmills, for example, left, right, and center all over the place, and pick up and leave and move ashore or abroad. And part of the, not just supporting that type of direction of our business community into more worker-run and democratically led work sites, but getting ourselves out of these trade agreements, which are largely corporate rights agreements. The workers don't gain more rights under NAFTA or NAFTA 2.0, whatever you want to call it, or even the trade agreements with Europe or other negotiations with Asia Pacific countries. Those are all about corporations gaining better access to certain markets. Well, that's not to the benefit of you and I, and we've seen that since the early 90s. Within the first year or two of of NAFTA being approved, we had 10,000 fewer small businesses operating in Canada. The conglomeration of major business interests into smaller and smaller groups of individuals and corporations that dominate a whole landscape is largely because of our trade agreements and giving all these rights to corporations. And it's harmed ordinary people who used to be able to get factory jobs and even just jobs within government doing science work and research and all that sort of stuff. And it's been grossly undermined by our trade agreements. Ideally, the capitalist system will be dismantled, and we would have a socialist system where the needs of people and the environment are placed before the needs of corporations and profits. So just probably the best example I have of how harmful capitalism has been and the practice that developed in capitalism, which has been so significantly environmentally damaging, is the concept of planned obsolescence, which is to create something that will only last for a short period of time, and then the consumer has to buy it again to replace it. And it was a concept developed in the 50s and 60s when the capitalist makers of products in the States said, geez, we made something and it's really good. Now everybody has it. How are we going to stay in business? We've flooded the market. Everybody has, let's say, a toaster. Everybody has toasters now. Well, if we could create a way that it stops working in 5 years, then they'll have to purchase it every 5 years, and this will keep us in business. Well, obviously, from an environmental perspective, that is incredibly wasteful and has been absolutely destructive to our environment. So in 2040, really, placing our resources under the democratic control of people and eliminating altogether the corporate interference, foreign interference in our local decision-making processes. People were worried about foreign interference during the American election and when Trump got elected. But the whole brown-face thing, which has come up with Mr. Trudeau today and yesterday, that was published by an American magazine, right? That was all discovered by an American magazine. Who knows what their agenda is? But in the last 24 hours, since this story is broken, I haven't heard anybody complaining about foreign interference in the Canadian election system. And it's really a black eye on the Canadian media landscape to not have discovered this themselves. And also there's this cozy relationship between our established media and those in power, and they don't want to offend each other too much, so they're awfully nice to each other. And I have a feeling that some of this may have been known and just was glossed over. It's not the type of embarrassment that the friends, Mr. Trudeau's friends in the media, want to actually talk about a whole lot. And it'll probably go by the wayside, and it's largely a distraction. I prefer night owl, but little kids make me an early riser now. Italian food. From that era, I'd have to go Black Sabbath. Frankly, they had a far more anti-establishment position than either of those bands. Staycation, although I do like traveling, but we stay pretty close. We never leave BC when we travel. Coffee. Waffles. My wife makes excellent waffles. Mountains. Dogs. Brewery. Depends. Delivery on most occasions. Dine in for special occasions. Cabin in the mountains. Tall socks in the winter, ankle socks in the summer.